thank you guys for coming. My name's Scott Soteric. I'm the Associate VP of Commercial Vehicle Solutions. If you don't know what that means, I basically do business development for the Class 6, 7, and 8 market, and also off-road, and we're starting to move into asset tracking. So that's my background. I come from the truck world. So I worked at a truck OEM for 8 years. I'm now at GEOTAB. They believe I know what I'm talking about as a truck OEM guy. I'm trying to pretend to be a software guy, and it's working so far, so don't tell them. And so I'm here today to talk to you guys about ELD. And really what we're going to dig into today is, talk a little bit about the different types of buyers. So, I mean, FMCSA has created a very interesting market. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. And then we're going to talk about, what customers are talking to us about, what they're looking for, and then really talk a lot more into GEOTAB Drive, which is our product. So I remember I was in Michigan. It was mid-February of 2016, and I get the notice, or no, I'm sorry, it was December of 2015, and I had just started GEOTAB about a month in, and we get the announcement that FMCSA is going to actually roll out hours of service regulation going into effect December 18th, 2018. From there, we had about 2 years to become compliant unless you had an AOBRD. And so in those 2 years, a lot of things really happened, and it was rather interesting. And I sort of wanted to get us started off by sort of giving you guys some perspective. FMCSA, if you guys haven't seen this, provides a very nice list of all of the self-certified ELD providers that are out there. And this is just a short overview of every single one of them. There's literally hundreds of these guys out here. And I could probably name about 10 or 11 of them, to be honest with you guys. So this government regulation has really caused a significant number of vendors to come into the marketplace and really offer solutions. And so as I was thinking about this, I really wanted to start off really talking about where the market's going. And there's really two ways of how people are getting there. And so I wanted to start off with that. So customer type, we're going to talk about that. Customer feedback, and then GEOTAB Drive in a little more detail. And then obviously, I want to leave lots of times about questions because this is government compliance and it's always changing, which is really exciting. So, customer type. So, if you look at the people who are out on the marketplace today, I've really broken them up into two categories. So, the first one is telematic providers who provide an ELD-only type application, right? That is their focus. It could be a one-person mom and pop shop, maybe 5, 10 trucks, but it's not necessarily enterprise. And then on the flip side of that, you obviously have your enterprise guys. And really, I would consider anybody enterprise, which has more than 50 trucks, 30 trucks, somebody who needs a little bit of sophistication in their day-to-day operation to stay relevant, right? At a certain point, you can't do all things from an ELD standpoint yourself. You need to have a little more sophistication. So, I look at an ELD-only buyer, and, really what they're interested in is app experience, right? It's very consumer-oriented, right? That's really what they're focused on. How does that driver move through the application? Very consumer-oriented, and they really only focus on a handful of things, and quite frankly, they do those things very well, right? And then you have the enterprise buyer, or ELD provider, and that's really what GEOTAB is. We're an Omnitrax or people in that Arizona, folks who have a lot more third-party integrations. Data security is a big thing to them, API access, machine learning, or it could be OEM relationships. And, and both parties are obviously interested in ELD and then IFTA fuel tax reporting, but those are really the two segments. And so when I'm out in the field and I'm talking with customers, I really run into both, right? And so when I get into a smaller customer, it's really about that app experience. And so that's, hey, if you guys ever gone on the Play Store and you've looked at reviews, right? These guys are really big into that, right? They're really interested in what Play Store reviews are, for an example, right? From a customer standpoint, they're really interested in really focusing on every single aspect of that driver experience with that specific app. like I said, it's usually small fleet or owner-operator, and they really don't have an internal IT department, so it's usually managed by one person, does everything A to Z. And then really at the end of the day, if you guys have ever run into this, I just want to be compliant, and that's it. And so that's something that I hear a significant amount of the time. So when we're looking at somebody who's a little bit more technical, more enterprise level, they're looking for advanced functionality or integration. So those are going to be TMS providers, the McLeods, the TMWs, the Prophecies, right? They're really interested in integrations, right? It could be to an OEM, it could be remote diagnostics, or whatever it is. Those are the things that they're most focused on. It could be medium to large size. Most fleets I run into are around 200 to 300 units. They start having an internal IT department, or they outsource it. So we see a lot of interest in API integrations and, you know, how else can I use the data to better improve my business? And then at the end of the day, the people who didn't have AOBRDs, so the old ELDs, they're interested in using this opportunity as an investment to improve their business, solve other problems. I've talked to many customers who have said, hey, this has really helped us because from a government standpoint, we have to be compliant, but it also helps solve 10 of our other problems. And so those are really the things that we talk a lot about. So, you know, these are really the two things from a customer standpoint that we run into. And for today's purpose, although GEOTAB does sell into the smaller market with, you know, one shop folks as well as up 5, 10, 15, 20, this presentation is really going to be focused about that enterprise customer that is really interested in utilizing all the functionality that GEOTAB has. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I just like to go through that because I really want to differentiate those two types of customers because they both want very different things. All right. So the first thing that when I go into a fleet, and I usually deal with larger fleets, is HOS really is one of a handful of buckets, right? My belief, and we'll get into it in more detail, but ELD is in general becoming more of a commodity. When you got 300 people on that list, FMCSA says they're compliant, they're self-certified, and really at the end of the day, it's a commodity. Now, there's things that you could do within it that adds a lot of value, but these are the things that we are focusing on as part of this discussion of ELD that makes our product a little bit more unique than, let's say, some of our competitors. So these are the things that we talk a lot about, and a lot of them are heavily related to hours of service because at the end of the day, data security, guess what? That's PIP, that's personally identified protected data, right? So it could be a driver's license, as an example. It could be integrations. We'll talk about that. And for TMW or McLeod, you need to have hours of service in order to do your dispatch. Or if you have a TL2000 or whatever, you need to have that as well. Access to the data. These guys want to be able to pull their hours of service data into their back office system, run custom reports, be able to do safety coaching, whatever it is, right? So this is something which a larger fleet is looking for. Capital expenditure. Everybody wants to be compliant, but they might not want to spend $2,000 on an older system, right, which is hardware heavy. And then expandability. And then probably the most important thing that we hear, and if you were in my last presentation, I hammered home on this, people are looking for a partner that they can partner with. Maybe not today. They can get away with what they have, but in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, they need a system that can really help them solve their problems and be able to continue to evolve as their business evolves. So we're going to dig into this in a little bit of detail for all these points, and then we're going to spend a lot of time on ELD specific, right? So the first one is security. So at GEOTAB, it's really interesting. If you guys haven't had a chance to stop by our security booth, I would highly recommend it. Top notch. And there's a couple of things that we think about. So industry engagement. The things that we want to be able to go to our customers and say, we are doing everything we possibly can to keep your driver's information secure as can possibly be. Now, nothing's foolproof, but we're doing everything that we can. And what that means is we're engaged within the entire industry. So that could be, if you guys are familiar with the auto ISAC, GEOTAB sits on the auto ISAC. We work with third-party penetration testing companies like And there's a whole bunch of them that we use, but basically they try to hack our servers, right? And if they're successful, we better fix it, right? And fortunately, we've been very successful on these pen tests. It could be bounty programs, right? We go to DEF CON and a whole host of other things. We're also actively engaged with ATA, NMFTSA. We sponsored the University of Tulsa, their cybersecurity challenge. We're doing a presentation tomorrow. But we're actively engaged, writing standards, helping the industry come to grips with a very scary threat, which is continually evolving. Did you guys hear about the Navy this week? It's pretty scary stuff. Foreign country stole, what was it, 600 gigabytes of highly classified military data on submarines. And so those are the things that we're looking at, right, and trying to become as secure as we possibly can. And that's really important, especially when it's driver information. Security team. We have a fully staffed security team within GEOTAB, which is dedicated to that specific goal, right? So that's putting in place practices internally. It's putting in place different protocols, security certifications, and so on. Documentation. This is my favorite one. GEOTAB's a very open company. Are you guys familiar with the TOMS document at all? All right. The TOMS document, if you go to geotab.com, the very bottom, you'll click on a site that says security. You can click on that. It'll bring up our security page. And in there, we have full documentation on not everything. We do some stuff under NDA, but anything publicly available, we provide front to back full security documentation of what we do to keep your data protected. And like I said, it's becoming more and more. Policies. This is my favorite one. So at GEOTAB, we are, Alan might not like, Alan's not here, we're good. We might be a little paranoid, which is a good thing. And so we have policies in place from password protection to Duo, so VPN. And quite frankly, at the end of the day, we also do phishing attempts on our employees, right? So basically, hey, Scott, this is an email from HR. Give me your credit card, or give me your password, or reset your password, or whatever it is. And so we're actively doing internal training, testing, to make sure that we're always on our toes, because security is a journey, not a destination, right? So that's something that us as GEOTAB employees get to look forward to. Integrations. This is something we're spending a lot of time on. So we talked about TMS systems. For larger fleets, they need a way to dispatch. McLeod, TMW, Prophecy, those are really the big ones. And we're continuing to invest in that. And really why this is important is from a hours of service standpoint for the big enterprise providers like GEOTAB and Omnitrix, people, we need to be able to provide how many hours are available for that driver when he leaves. So if I only have to go 300 miles, but I only got 4 hours of drive time left, I probably shouldn't dispatch that driver, right? And so this is something where I'll be quite frank, we have lagged significantly. And over the last year and a half, 2 years, we have caught up. It's not perfect, but we've come a long way on our integrations with these TMS providers. And it's critical for the large fleets for hours of service. So we're doing a good job, I think, in catching up with the Omnitrax and PeopleNet on this specific piece. Remote diagnostics, I don't think anybody does it better than we do. We're actively engaged with every single OEM, every single tier 1 provider. And that comes from engine manufacturers, transmission manufacturers. You know, at this conference, we have Cummins, Eaton, Allison's walking around, and then a number of OEMs as well. So we have good relationships with them. And at the end of the day, nobody knows their product better than themselves, right? Now, I might be able to say, hey, I got, you know, these 5 data points coming through the Go device to GEOTAB, but they're going to be able to actually make sense of that using their data analytics and be able to feed that back to the fleet. Safety systems. This is something where GEOTAB takes a much different approach in which we don't have our own proprietary solution. So if you want a camera provider, guess what? We have 5 options. If you want, you know, whatever it is, if you want a tire pressure monitoring system, which is another safety system, you have a multitude of options, right? GEOTAB is a platform, and we want you guys to be able to provide or work with the best and brightest. So GEOTAB does not have a one-size-fits-all type solution, and that's something which differentiates us and really has helped us with our growth. Tire pressure monitoring system, same thing, are really the big ones that we hear over and over. Third-party devices. This is something that is a little unique in which we are starting the process, and we're getting more and more of it, of taking third-party hardware and then feeding it into our system. So maybe it's a trailer, maybe it's a container, maybe it's a person, maybe it's a tablet, maybe it's a dolly. What do you want GEOTAB's rules engine to work on in addition to the powered unit? So you're going to start seeing more and more of that. And that's something that really nobody else does. And then Bluetooth beacons. How many of you guys are familiar with Bluetooth beacons? If you don't know about them, they're awesome. You could track anything, so it's usually used for tools. My personal favorite is porta potties. If you were in the last presentation, I talked about that. But it's a way to track anything you want that is high dollar, right? Where did I drop it? Where did I leave it? You know, and so on and so forth. There's a whole host of things that you could do. All right. In addition to that, access to the data. So there's a couple parts of this. So the first one is CAN bus data. So one of the things that I talk a lot about is GEOTAB is a telematics solution. We are not a data logger. But we're getting to the point where we have all these advanced data analytics companies. So internally at GEOTAB, we have 20 people on our big data team. We work with key partners such as like Uptake, which is a huge data analytics company. And there's a whole host of other guys that we work with, right? How do we pull more data off the CAN bus to feed their machine learning systems so they can continue to be more proactive? So that's something else which is really huge. And the beauty of that is that, guess what happens when the driver breaks down? Does his hours stop? His clock stop? Nope, keeps going, right? You want that truck on the road and keep it moving. So from an hours of service standpoint, it might seem ancillary, but it's really important because that clock doesn't stop once it goes. Open APIs is another one, and really that's like we described before. And then the last one is something which is really interesting. So GEOTAB as a Google BigQuery system, you know, at some point in the future, we're going to have the ability to open that up in a little more detail, right? So customers can pull directly, which we're really excited about. So there's a lot of functionality regarding, you know, what we can do. You know, maybe APIs aren't good enough. Maybe they want to go directly to Google or big data cloud. So we're really excited about that as well. Capital expenditures. The thing that's sort of unique from a GEOTAB standpoint is we have a very simple product, right? And then if you want additional functionality, you can buy additional pieces of hardware. So instead of saying, hey, here's a $1,000 piece of hardware, which will give you everything you want, well, I only need $200 worth of that stuff, right? And so it's really a platform to build on and help keep that capital expenditure down if you don't need the ancillary products. Fleet choice for driver interface. We talk about driver retention a lot. Everybody in this room, I'm sure, is familiar with the driver shortage. The ability for a driver to have a platform, if it's a Samsung or an LG or an Apple or whatever. I used this last presentation. How many of you guys are millennials? For better or worse, right? And we have short attention spans. We want something which is slick, something we've used our entire life, and that's a tablet, right? It's not a proprietary screen. And so that's something else that we're doing that is very different from how most of our competitors do it. Expandability. My GEOTAB with the add-ins. So if you guys aren't familiar, we could take information and pull it directly into GEOTAB, and customers are able to view it within the My GEOTAB app. And then same thing with GEOTAB Drive. And so this is something, are you guys familiar with add-ins for GEOTAB Drive? All right, so basically you could take GEOTAB Drive, our software, which is hours of service, and then you could build an add-in within that. So it could be something like, it could be anything, right? So cross-border. It could be a driver gamification application, like what Anthony's company does. It could be a whole host of things, but basically, it's a way for a fleet to be able to provide additional functionality within GEOTAB Drive. And that's something you guys can build, and GEOTAB's not even part of that conversation. We build the infrastructure, and that's something that you could use. And that's something that nobody else in the industry really does. So that's another example. And then Iox harnesses. So analog inputs, digital inputs, Iridium satellites, and so on and so forth. So mobile applications, marketplace partners. So these are all the things that we talk about. Now, the thing that I get really excited about, like I said, is this is what we hear. And this is my second slide on this, so I just want to hammer this home. It's about growing with our partners, right? GEOTAB is constantly investing in our solution, so which we could be that partner today, tomorrow, and in 5 years. So with that being said, we're going to talk about GEOTAB Drive, which is a really interesting story. So I came to GEOTAB at the end of 2015, and GEOTAB Drive was a small portion of our business. It really was, and we've invested very heavily in this. And so these are some of the things that we're doing and what we're seeing in the marketplace. So if you go out and you look at the competitors, I put them on the right-hand side. So these are our competitors, and these are good competitors of ours. And these are the things that we hear on a pretty regular basis. So basic ELD, it's basically a commodity, is what we hear over and over, right? So all of these guys have that along with hundreds of others on the list. What we really get into, though, is advanced features, and this is really where we differentiate ourselves. So this is once you get into rule sets. So each state has a different rule set in most cases, right? Then you got your federal rule sets. Then you have all the exemptions. Have you guys heard about the ag exemption from last week? So basically, if you're an ag hauler, if you're within 150 air miles, guess what? You don't have to, it's like the same as being off duty. It's wild, right? Fortunately, we didn't have to do any engineering work to be able to accommodate that, but typically we do, right? So every single change in Washington, D.C. that comes out, us as ELD providers need to go in, make modifications, put it through QA, and then eventually release it. And that's something that we do on a monthly basis, which is we have a much shorter time frame than most of our competitors do. Reporting is something else that we're working on diligently, adding additional reporting mechanisms, and this is something that we need to continue to work on. This is something that some of our competitors do better than us, and we need to keep working on that, and we will. DVR functionality, we have a lot of flexibility in the DVR from a GEOTAB standpoint. Not this release, but the next release, we're going to be taking a deep dive into DVR and adding some additional functionality for Canadian DVR. Each province has their own requirements, and so we have to dig into that. And then there's also this concept of having multiple DVR lists for different parts of your fleet, and then the ability to also, so in the old days, when it was a DOT inspection, guess what? You had to fix everything, right? Well, now you can put anything on the DVR list, so maybe you want to leave that portion of the DVR open. We do a whole or nothing, so we're going to be adding that. So these are some of the things that we're working on from a DVR standpoint to really bring that product up to world class. And then the driver experience. And everybody does it a little bit differently. I like to think our solution is very simple, easy to use, portable from a tablet to a smartphone to whatever you want, right? But these are the things that we hear all the time. And then UI modifications, and then other third-party integrations. So this is basically our life from an ELD standpoint. You got a basic commodity as a product, and then everybody else wants tweaks here and there. And I'm going to talk through what we actually see from improvements, bugs, in a couple slides and so on. But these are the things that we're focused on. And if you look at our team, go back 2.5 years, before we really spent a significant amount of effort in GEOTAB Drive, we initially had one developer and then a half-time developer 3 years ago working on this. Today, we have a team of 10 developers that are focused to GEOTAB Drive, and then we have a co-op student who's getting brought up to speed. And by the time he or she gets up to speed, she'll be gone, but that's okay, because we got 10 full-time people that are just focused on this. And then we have another group of around 25-plus engineers that come in and help this team when it's necessary. So GEOTAB is spending millions of dollars in our GEOTAB Drive application. So basically what these guys do is the business, so myself and the ELD team, so my team and the ELD team, we come together before a release starts, a sprint starts, and we basically sit down and we hammer through every single outstanding bug, all the improvements, all the feature requests, everything upper management's telling us we need to get done. We put it together, we look at the sprint, how long they have, what each one of our developer skill sets are, and then we go to the ELD software team and say, hey, this is what we want you guys to get done. Then they look at us and say, you guys are out of your mind, slice it by 80% and we can get it done, and we land somewhere in the middle, right? And then they go through a 4, 6, 8-week sprint, depending on what time of year it is and what we have to get done. And really, it's that team that gets us done, and we do pretty much every month releases. Sometimes it's 6 weeks, but we try to get it out every 4 weeks. We also have a dedicated ELD software development team, and we looked back, and how many of you guys know Vic? So if you guys know Vic, Vic was doing everything. And we somehow managed to go from Vic to a team of 6 plus a couple of open posts. So essentially, we have a full team which are able to do everything from, so we get this all the time, a DOT officer has given a ticket to one of our customers and they were incorrect. That happens, right? So we will call the actual FMCSA office in certain cases and get involved and try to understand what happened. And in many cases, get that ticket reversed. It could be bugs. It could be new releases. It could be documentation. It could be taking feature requests, whole host of things. But at the end of the day, these 6 people, and you'll see them, Grish and Kyle and so on. Jobin's on vacation, lucky guy. But essentially, these guys are really there to support the business, support our resellers, and support our customers in day-to-day. And we need a big team to be able to do that. And then you have me. And then I have a couple of folks who work in markets that are affected by hours of service. And so that's really my rental leasing folks, my Class 8 guys, and my vocational guy. And so we also help build that story and continue to push the envelope. And so if you look at this, we got about 20 people that focused a significant portion of their day on ELD. And we're really excited about that investment. It's a huge part of GEOTAB. And if you look, and this is a little small, so bear with me. So if you go way back, so this was the beginning of last year, it was very low, very small. And we've increased up to about 175,000 users today. And we're adding around 10,000 a month are using GEOTAB Drive. If you look at the breakdown over here, the vast majority is Android. And then we also have iOS as well. And so we're continuing to evolve. So the dates on these aren't exact, but we're continuing to evolve on users and add additional functionality to the system. So it's really been a very high learning curve for GEOTAB. All right, so on the day-to-day of what the ELD team and then our software team does, is this what it is? So unfortunately, we have yet to develop a system that doesn't have bugs, unfortunately. So from time to time, a bug will get through our entire QA process, and then we'll typically catch it with internal testing, our field testing, and then it goes to a customer, our development test, our QA testers. We have some fleets that do the QA for us, and then we start doing small rollout. And usually they're really small stuff, but we need to get them resolved. So they spend their days working with bugs that come out from time to time. The other one they get is a lot of performance improvements. And so it'll be something of tweaking the way the processor works, or it might be a workflow. I'd rather see it like this. So there's a whole host of things that the team works on, but performance improvements is a big one of them. Government changes. So I get to work with our friends in Washington, D.C. And so what we have is we have people on staff in D.C. that are keeping us up to date on what's coming down the pipeline. So really what we're getting at is GEOTAB does not want to be flat-footed when something goes through committee. We want to know 6 months before Congress passes a bill, or what FMCSA is thinking they're going to do, or what questions are going to be asked to Ray Martinez when he testifies in front of the Commerce Committee or whatever it is. And so we're heavily engaged in government affairs, not so much for an agenda, but just to understand what in the world's going on so we can plan ahead of time, right? We don't, drop everything and then make changes based on the government, or at least we don't want to, right? So government's another big piece of it. And then the last one is my personal favorite, feature requests. If you look on the right-hand side, we have all types of requests. It could be API access. It could be a driver usability feature they want. It could be a UI request, rule sets. I can't tell you how many rule sets there are out there. It could be reporting, DVR, system usability. Something comes up with Android or iPhone. How many of you guys have a Windows phone? I still get Windows Phone requests. They discontinued it, and I still get them. So we get all types of requests. And so we bucket them. Super high, high, medium, low. I can't believe somebody asked for that. Denied, right? And so we're constantly going through this list based on feedback from you. So that's the reseller, that's the customer, that's the marketplace partner. And we are going to continue to improve this product until it's world class. So if you really, and it's very good, but we're going to continue to improve it until we've answered all of your guys' questions and added all the functionality. So the title of this presentation was, GEOTAB, how do we compare to the rest of the industry? So I think the biggest thing that I look at, And in my previous life, I dealt with everybody. I had integrated every single telematics provider, which would roll off the tip of your tongue. I knew them, I had integrated them into my platform. And the reason why GEOTAB is so different from all these guys is a couple-fold. One is that we're making the investment every day of every month of the year, right? So if it's software, if it's firmware, we're constantly pushing the envelope, adding additional functionality, making it better. If we don't have it today, we'll add it to the list, and we will get it in. And so that's probably the biggest one, is we are constantly innovating. We have 160 engineers, and that is our DNA. We are not a marketing company or a sales company. You guys see Tony Steve on stage this morning? You could tell engineers run this company, because that is not a sales guy going up there, right? So that's really where GEOTAB differentiates ourselves, and really why GEOTAB Drive has really come a long way over the last 3+ years. So we're really excited about you guys coming on out and listening to me squawk for about 45 minutes or whatever it is. What questions do you guys have for me, if any? Except for Anthony. Kidding. Go ahead.
What kind of sales have you seen? Have you seen your sales, that projection, right up to April, but since the mandate?
Oh yeah, it's tailed off. Yeah, it's tailed off. Yeah, I mean, we're still adding between 5,000 and 10,000 ELD units per month, but it's definitely tailed off after the April 1st deadline, and that's to be expected. We do believe that starting next year, early next year, we're working with a number of customers. They're currently on AOBRD, and they have till the end of 2019 to make a decision. And so they're evaluating us, they're evaluating our competitors, saying, we know we have to get to ELD in 2019. What else do we need? And that's why I went through some of the other things that I wanted to talk through, is because they're making those evaluations now, so which they can do a rollout later this year into 2019 and have something in place. Because we had our first one December 18th, then you had soft enforcement till April 1st, and then now we'll have the December 2019 date. Is everybody familiar with that concept of AOBRD sunsetting into ELD in 2019? Okay. Perfect. So yeah, so it did drop off. Like I said, we're adding about 5,000 to 10,000. Truck activations are between 10,000 and 20,000 a month for GEOTAB right now.
How many did you see a lot of out of service once April came out? I have not seen it catastrophic.
No, so the question was around out of service. Nah, the industry didn't blow up like a lot of people thought. I mean, obviously there's challenges. And the fleets in the room could talk to them much better than I can. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely been more. I know this week was roadside inspection week, and or it was last week, and I haven't got feedback yet on that, how that went. But yeah, generally speaking, it's been as normal as can be. I think most of our fleets already had something in place, or our larger fleets, they don't really mess around with that. But for some of the smaller guys, it's obviously a huge change in how they operate their business. Any other questions? Good.
Maybe a tough question, but with all your growth, what percentage would you say are coming from the other big ELD headers like Omnitrax and Verizon and so forth?
Yeah, so the question was, how much of our sales are coming from people coming to the GEOTAB platform? It's a really hard question.
I'm more specifically thinking about
the bigger Omnitrax people now?
300 you listed.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. I'm just curious if you see a lot of turnover switching out from the other big ELD players in the market.
Yeah, so I mean, I think, so I'll be dangerous and speak for the industry, which could be dangerous, so bear with me. I think that it sort of gets back to that partner side. I think a lot of larger fleets are evaluating where they're at with their current provider, and will they be able to get them to where they need to be in 3 to 5 years, right? Based on my conversations, the overarching answer is probably not, and they are evaluating other people in the market. Has it been a tidal wave at this point? No. Are there examples? Absolutely. That are here, not in this room, but are here at GEOTAB Connect. But I think over time you'll start seeing more and more of that. I've spent the last 2.5 years trying to lay a foundation to have an offering that a big fleet could be interested in a meaningful way for a Class 8 LTL or over-the-road fleet, right? And I think we've succeeded at that. So Time will tell, but some, but not an avalanche at this point. Any other questions? All right, guys. Well, thank you for coming. Really appreciate it. Enjoy Connect. I look forward to seeing you guys tonight.